Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show. I'm Michael.
And I'm Patty.
Where we cover everything as transparently as possible in regards to not only Prince Edward Island real estate, but the general real estate market in North America overall, where we bring you over 4 decades of ups and downs in the real estate market. Anything to add?
I think it makes us sound very old, Michael, is what it feels like.
That's why people keep calling you senile.
I'm not being called senile, but thank you for that. But that is impressive that you've been in the market, in the real estate business, on Prince Edward Island specifically for almost 3 decades.
27 years, 4 months, and 12 days.
And who's counting?
And you're 16 years and 2 days, I think it is.
I'm somewhere around there, but I'm not counting as acutely as you are.
Let's get into this. Let's discuss something we covered last week just briefly. We had a woman contact an agent, and she was adamant that she was going to see this house on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. She knew there was tenants in there, and she could recite the Landlord-Tenant Act here in Prince Edward Island. She also referred to the fact that he must absolutely, as a real estate agent representing the listing or the vendors or home sellers, had to show her this property Sunday at 10 a.m. because it was part of the Real Estate Trading Act, which I call out bullshit. And I said this to Patty. I said, there's nothing in the REALTOR Code or the Real Estate Trading Act that demands an agent to show any listing that they have. This woman was annoying. Her demands were ridiculous. And the fact that she had no respect for the agent or the tenants, and the fact that she added to this scenario that she was going to come in with a lowball crappy offer because that's all the property is worth in her opinion, and they were going to accept it. These are the kinds of entertaining things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in real estate that make producing a podcast exciting.
Yes, I guess there's no shortage of content for the podcast for sure, and great learning opportunities when you are dealing with people who try to posture themselves as being knowledgeable or informed, but meanwhile, like in this instance and situation, just not very educated.
So according to my research, the short answer, and I grabbed this from ChatGPT and Gemini just to reconcile the two, it says, no, there's nothing in the REALTOR Code or Prince Edward Island Real Estate Trading Act that requires the listing agent to show a property to anyone simply because they demand it. That's the bottom line. I just wanted to get back to that because last week I said that sounds like nonsense, and it is absolute nonsense. I wouldn't be dealing with this person even if they called me with that type of attitude. And in fact, on this showing, they fired the other agent too. So,
yes, apparently they didn't feel they were being. Anyways, there was a whole messy situation, and I feel the agent that has perhaps in this particular buyer's mind been terminated has some extra time to actually work with people that will respect and value the services that she offers.
Our job as an agent is to make sure that the purchasers going through the property are qualified, they're ready to write an offer. Everybody that's included in the buying decision is present at the showing so it doesn't turn into 2, 3, 4 showings. That's what our job is. Our job is not to answer the phone, allow someone else to control our schedule and do showings at Sunday at 10 a.m., where I'm thinking the people that are tenants in this property probably would find that a bit of an imposition as well.
Well, but you're also not taking into consideration, it's regardless if you give 3 days or 4 days notice, which is partly, I think, the position that this individual was taking, but they never took into consideration what if they were working nights and they had another shift that started at 3 and they just got off at 7 and like they don't know the circumstances. So I find it very disrespectful to just dictate. I would like to see the property sometime over, I'm giving a couple days notice for sure. That seems respectful and reasonable. But to dictate the time and say you have every right, we don't know what the tenant's reality or if they've maybe they've got kids.
And
I
then
find it rude.
And then to fabricate stuff that's not in the Realtor Code or in the PEI Real Estate Trading Act is ridiculous. Moving along, now that we've gotten that hostility out of the way.
But I feel better.
So do I, and I hope she goes away and moves to another province. When we write an offer, the offer usually has on the first page how many typically hours, although you could modify this to whatever you would like, hours to produce the deposit. Typically the hours, most of the times 48, 72, once in a while 96. That deposit has to be delivered to the listing brokerage within that time allotment. If it isn't, technically you breached part of the contract, and now that contract could be construed or looked at as invalid. So this agent, a newer agent, was told, but not only a broker, I think it was two brokers, or was it an agent and a broker? Or was it two brokers, an agent,
Doesn't
and another
matter.
broker?
Just keep moving.
This agent was told by two different brokers that, the contract's garbage. We have to rewrite it from scratch because it's been breached. I call BS again. This is absolute nonsense. All you need to do when a clause expires and it's not fulfilled is you need to rebind the contract with a paragraph that basically says the contract is still in place. There's a bit more verbiage to it, but it basically says, regardless of whether this has been breached, we still honor the contract and it's still enforced, and assuming at this point they do have the deposit on hand. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just letting you
Ms.
know.
Castle, please go ahead.
So for our listeners, whether you're a buyer or a seller, and you're, okay, so where do I put this paragraph? Do I email it? What do I do? We have a form within our web forms database, and it is an amendment. Those who have real estate experience will be familiar with this. Those who do not, there is a form on Prince Edward Island that we have as an amendment. There's a box at the top that says insert or delete, and there's a box in the bottom that says insert. So basically what we're doing, like you had said, Michael, is there just needs to be an acknowledgement that both parties are aware that whatever the clause is, that the contract is no longer active, but both parties agree to rebind the contract and that it is still active and valid. And then on top of it, with regards to, so this particular situation, if the deposit was not sent in the allotted time within the initial contract agreement, aside from clause number 1 to reactivate or that the contract is still active and valid and binding, then you insert a second one saying that the deposit is to be submitted by and whatever that date is. That is the simplest way to do this so that you're not having to redo a whole contract and open it up to the extent that the seller may now end up receiving another offer, and now that buyer number 1 that they had an accepted agreement, but for whatever reason they defaulted on sending the deposit in time, now may stand the chance of losing the property due to a little bit of sloppy timelines and not taking the contract to the letter. And it's not just technically, it is legally you have to send that deposit in within the time frame allotted. So just be mindful. If you're a buyer and you think, I'll just send it in on this time, send it in as soon as you have that contract under contract, the property under contract, so that you are able to say, okay, I've secured the property, because you could run the risk of life happens, things get a little bit sloppy, or you're waiting, because I've heard this as well. A buyer may say, well, I've got it under contract. I'm going to send this, but I'm still waiting for my approval, and not approval to actually purchase the property, but their pre-approval. So I'm going to be a little laxed and make sure I get this first before I send any money. Don't play games like that. It is not fair to the seller. And it's not fair to the agents involved as well, and your buyer's agent. Your buyer's agent, if they've done an effective intake or qualifying of that buyer, they wouldn't have allowed you to enter into a contractual agreement.
And usually the deposit is either sent in via an ETF or a wire, or it could be hand-delivered the old-fashioned way to the listing brokerage, whether that's a check, certified check, or bank draft. As far as the amendment's concerned or any of the paperwork, there's no reason you just can't write that up from scratch if you want to. The only challenge is when you write up forms by yourself, which I've done from time to time, the errors and omissions insurance may look at that as an out if there's any issues. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that.
So they're looking for the approved forms, which are kind of written for idiots half the time. And that's why sometimes I write them myself, because I think I'm not in grade 2 kindergarten.
But
and that's one of the forms I'm actually referring to.
Yeah, but the forms, like you said, the reason why I advise my team to use them is for that added element protection from our insurance in case something does go sideways, or like what the topic we were just speaking of when we started or opened up this particular episode, you could be dealing with somebody that might be a little bit of a loose screw. So you want to make sure you're using the proper forms just in case, because things are good as long as it's good, but as soon as it goes sideways and bad, it can get really bad.
Here's a trivia question for you. I want to make an offer, but I don't want to put a deposit down.
You at the very least have to put $1. So what is your trivia
My trivia
answer?
question is that a legitimate contract that's bound?
Not if there's not an exchange of even $1.
You need a cash, wire, ETF, whatever. There has to be something to bind that contract, even if it's a $20 bill. So without that money, from what I've been told by my numerous lawyer friends, that contract isn't bound. So just something to keep a heads up on. Don't play games with the deposit. Get it in a timely fashion. And in this particular case, the issue would have never existed if this agent was just on top of her game and got that deposit right away. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, stay on top of if the agent has the systems in place to say every day, did you send the deposit first thing in the morning?
Every hour.
Okay, every hour. You clearly have more time on your hands than I do.
No, I want that
day's
deposit,
end.
and I want the FinTrack, and I want this off my desk.
Well,
I don't want to spend 4 days looking for a deposit.
FinTrack is a whole other. It's not that you want the FinTrack. Legally, you have to do an effective risk assessment.
I want the FinTrack.
Before you even allow this person to enter into a contractual agreement.
So
that is the law.
FinTrack is Canada's anti-money laundering regulations and laws, and that's why your agent may ask you for your passport and or driver's license.
And we've covered this on a previous episode.
Deadlines, which opens up another door. Deadlines are there for a reason. And although in the past in PEI real estate and or the Maritimes, things are pretty relaxed and willy-nilly sometimes. I've had contracts that were written on the back of a 2x4. What's the worst contract you've ever seen?
You sure because you've been in it so long you didn't use one of those slates that you found?
Yes. The other one I've signed is the picture against a piece of wall board. What is that stuff they use in the old cottages and houses?
Panel board?
Panel board. A picture of an offer. So I've received that, but regardless of how it's delivered to you, those clauses that have deadlines, let's take, for instance, the IRAC clause, Island Regulatory Appeals Commission, which we're going to talk about more in this episode. If it's due by the 27th of February, it's due by the 27th of February. It's not due by the 27th of February or whenever they get off their rear ends and give you an approval because they're away because it's a snow day. This just happened to me. That contract becomes in breach. And if you've got a seller that doesn't care whether the house sells and you're the buyer and this contract is in breach and another offer that comes in that's better than yours, you've breached the contract. If they want to, they can sell it to somebody else right now because you weren't on your toes and neither was your agent. Now, chances are you're probably going to get into a bit of a kerfuffle, if I may use that legal term, with the legal system, but don't leave the door open for this and give the listing agent and the home seller the ability to entertain other offers because you're not on your game. Again, keep track of all these deadlines, fulfill them or amend them if things are going to be late, and hopefully the party that's selling the house agrees with the amendment, which in 99% of the time they will, unless they have somebody else in the background that's offering them more, they may want the contract to be breached.
And that's actually a good point, too. So there's a few things in there, Michael. The seller could have a backup offer on the property. Our contracts, most of the clauses within our contract, the time period is, using your example, is the 27th, say, Michael.
Of February.
But it's even more, it's 5 p.m. and 5 p.m. on PEI. So at 5:01 p.m., technically, legally, that contract is null and void if arrangements have not been made and a discussion and an agreement, even if it is just a verbal agreement that, you know what, Iraq decided to take a snow day, so they're going to push the decision-making process out, whether it's a couple days or it's a week or two. You need to be mindful. So right at the beginning, on the onset, if you're a buyer listening to this and your agent's writing a contract and Iraq deadline or the decision day is the 27th, please ask your agent to give a couple extra days. For whatever reason, maybe the person who does all the posts of the decisions are sick that day and they're not posting them, and you have until 5 p.m. And because your agent said, well, the decision will be out, it's usually out about noon, 1 o'clock on that day, so we should be good. Do not trust that. Please give a couple extra days. And I would say if it's a Friday that the decision goes out, even give until Tuesday, Wednesday minimum, just to be able to get your paperwork in order, make sure everyone is aware so your contract doesn't lapse or expire, leaving the seller in a great opportunity to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to be moving forward with our backup offer, to which the buyer's agent on offer number 1 says, we weren't even aware. Well, did you ask? Did you keep in touch? Did you ask the agent? The condition is due at 5 p.m. today. It looks like we might need an extension. This conversation should be had the day before, or say 9 a.m. the morning of, because at that time you would have been made aware, no, there's a backup offer and I don't believe my client's going to be in a position or agree to extend. That is valuable information to be relayed on to the buyer.
So as a listing or as a buyer's agent, let's say, and the listing agent says, well, we're going to entertain the backup offer at this point because you guys didn't fulfill one of your conditions. What can you say to that listing agent to make it more compelling for them to extend that condition?
Well, one of the things, and
cash.
Not cash. We
cash.
don't. Okay, one of the things that I would say is, it is along that line, but I wouldn't say just cash, is we will increase our deposit and make it non-refundable. That could bait the seller to give you additional time, especially if the other offer still is filled with conditions, which then brings you, if you're submitting a backup offer, you want that backup offer to be as clean as possible. Obviously, you don't know what the offered price on the primary or the first offer is, so you're kind of just negotiating blindly and whatever is agreed upon. But you want a strong offer for a backup offer, one that compels the seller should buyer number 1 not be able to fulfill or meet their deadlines, that the seller just feels a commitment or an obligation. I have to go with offer number 2. Really sorry it expired. I appreciate all the money you spent on home inspections and, all your due diligence. However, at the end of the day, it's business, and I'm going with the backup offer.
So although I've seen this commercial, you don't see this in residential a lot, you could just do what Patty just said. The deposit, let's say hypothetically, is $10,000. We're going to tell you to keep that. We're going to remove all the conditions other than Iraq because we need that. And we're going to increase the purchase price by $50,000. You can do something like that. So it's not as lucrative to accept the other offer. But just don't get into this situation to begin with if you can help it. In a lot of cases, it's preventable. And that's about it for that topic. We're moving along.
Well, no, but like you said, where does this start? This starts at the beginning when you are writing your clauses and making sure you know what you're doing or ask the right questions, or you have, again, I know it's done here on PEI, you feel compelled to, my cousin, uncle, brother, or sister, or aunt just got a real estate license. I feel like I need to help them out and I'm going to give them the business. please just know this could cost you money down the road. And as knowledgeable, especially as the first lady we opened this with, thinks that they know everything, there's so much more. And I mean, if you've listened to the Michael and Patty show, and you start from one and go all the way through, you probably are pretty well educated and informed.
The other thing I'll add to the first topic that we had, where you've got a lady that's fabricating things that she's indicating are in the REALTOR Code or within the PEI Real Estate Trading Act or whatever it's referred to as, go to those documents and look it up. Because a lot of people make statements and they're just not true. And that's the first thing a lawyer is going to do, or a judge is going to do, is they're going to say, show me the paper.
Yep.
And in this case, when you see the paper, none of that's in there. Let's talk about dishonest home sellers and why the winter is the best time to sell their home. So the other day, I drove by this house. Beautiful house on an acre or two in Charlottetown. Loved it. The driveway, I could see from the Google Earth photos, was a circle and a straight line to the garage. So the circle was sort of to the right, and then you had the straight line to the garage. When I offered on this house, I noticed they hadn't plowed the circle, only to find out, because I walked away from this house, and I'll tell you why in a second, the driveway was absolutely shot where the circle was. So I noticed this house is up for sale again, and forgetful vendor didn't shovel the snow on this circle, which is probably about a $20,000, probably at least a $10,000 or $20,000 job to redo this part of the driveway. I would look at Google Earth satellite imagery. There's probably another half a dozen different sources for satellite imagery, as well as the Google Drive-By Street View. I would also ask them if they have any summer pictures or if there's any online or attached to see where everything is and what should I expect once the 1 to 2 feet of snow disappears. The reason I walked away from this house is because there is Kitech. You can look that up, but it's plumbing you want nothing to do with. Patty?
Yeah, all I was going to say was this was about 11 years ago. The property had exchanged hands. So the seller, when you were looking at the property, Michael, had done that. And this now consecutive, this different property owner is also playing a bit of the same game here, because I know I'm familiar with this property as well. They did not repave the driveway. So one of the things with regards to this particular topic is, when is the best time to look at a property? People usually wait. And why is the spring market so busy? It's because the tulips are out, the green grass is starting to sprout.
The basement's flooded.
No, it's not flooded. It's
If it's going to flood, that's when it's going to flood, which is a great time to be looking at houses.
Okay, so my point with this is, the best people typically will go out when the weather is really nice and they feel that is the best time. My point is, the best time to look at properties can be during the ugly seasons, during the bad weather seasons. So at this time of year, except from what you had just said, Michael, referring to the driveway being under snow. Well, it's not even that. Maybe you don't have the option of waiting 6 months for the weather. Use the resources and tools. Don't just look at the property, whatever time of year you're looking at it. Check it out on, Google Street View. Look at some of the different seasons that you can. Many properties will have, some only have one Google Street View drive-by, and some will have 4 or 5 drive-bys logged. So, and if you don't know how to use that, you can always reach out to us, but it is a powerful tool, the Google Street View. I know, Michael, you've driven down streets all over the planet, so don't underestimate the tools available. Take a look at the homes during, the winter season. One of the telltales during the winter season that you'd be able to see is the icicles coming off of the roof. And that's indicative, typically, of how well insulated the attic and that is on the home. You want to look at it, like you had just mentioned, Michael, during the spring thaw, because if there is water seepage, that is when you are, especially if it's been a heavy winter, will have the highest probability of experiencing or seeing or witnessing that. So don't only be a fair weather property shopper. Look at the property during some of the ugly seasons or the bad weather. I mean, not that winter's necessarily ugly. I know many people who absolutely love winter. But from a real estate standpoint, there's no flower beds and all that curb appeal necessarily that you would experience during the summer.
Which actually lends, twisting this 180 degrees to selling your house. If you do have beautiful flower beds or gardens or a backyard or views in the summer, put them on the kitchen table, post them to the MLS listing because now we're allowed some 50 photos plus or minus.
And Michael, that's another great point. If you know that you're looking at selling your property sometime, which I have a client, they're American clients, they are a lovely couple, and they know we've been back and forth for a few years now, and the decision has been made that they know it's either this summer or next summer that they're going to be listing their beautiful cottage property that is on the water. So what we did last summer was we went ahead and we have done all the outside photos during the peak summer season, just in case circumstances led them to have to list the property during the winter. If you know you're going to be selling in the next couple years, just not sure of when that all of a sudden you're going to wake up and today's the day we've got to, sell our property, take some photos, make sure the whole house is in the frame and your garbage cans are gone. But just play realtor, play real estate agent, and take a few photos of your property, showing it when it's beautiful and your vehicles are out of the driveway, just in case to have them, whether, like you said, Michael, you use them have them on your kitchen counter or island to showcase the property during its pretty season, especially if you're bringing it on in the winter, or if they're really nice, your realtor might be able to use them for the MLS listing.
Or better yet, what I did is I had a couple that wanted to list in January, and we actually met in August. So what I did is we had the professional photographer and videographer. We staged the house. We had the photos done. It went live in January, and we actually received a record offer on that in this subdivision, because there was nothing else for sale at that point. And we had a beautiful waterfront home that actually had someone from Alberta buy completely sight unseen over asking price, which is not something you typically see in January. But because the marketing materials were already preemptively produced, we were able to move that in January.
And it popped. I bet it popped on the MLS.
Popped. It was like a 3D image. It was like you're wearing those 3D glasses looking at the MLS. Just one last thing about driving around in the winter, just looking out here at the water where our mobile studio is today, you'll notice the government buildings have absolutely no snow on the roof at all. Yet when you look at the buildings that are owned privately, there's snow on the roofs. What does that tell you in my opinion? These aren't insulated. So when you're driving around and you see 10 houses and 10 houses have snow on them, and one house does it, chances are they're either running a grow-op or there's no insulation in that house. And if you see icicles that are 6 or 8 feet long, like little trees, there's a lot of heat escaping as well from that sort of soffit roof area, right?
Absolutely.
Next, if you're going to build a cottage and it's in a subdivision that's being used year-round by the neighbors,
or the potential,
spend an extra few bucks to get it up to year-round level. I just was looking at a property the other day. It's 2 or 3 years old. It's a beautiful property. It's got exceptional water views. It's in a subdivision that was initially a cottage subdivision. Now probably a quarter of them are year-round neighbors, and they're plowing and maintaining the road in the winter. But this place is insulated in the walls, in the ceilings. The windows are obviously double pane or triple pane windows, probably double. But underneath they did nothing. So they can't use it in the winter. The question I had is, why wouldn't you spend the money to make this 100% winterized? I know why it wasn't done, because it was a spec home. The builder was trying to save a few grand. But from what it would have taken to bring that from a seasonal to a year-round home would have made that property probably sell faster, sell to a wider audience, and be usable year-round. If you're using it for a rental, this is advantageous because you could actually rent it out for Thanksgiving, for New Year's, for Christmas, for birthdays, for other holidays. So if you're going to build something new, winterize it. if you're 99% of the way there anyway.
And the amount of money, what the cost of winterizing it, you will get back and probably double, triple of a return on that, because now you've got a cottage property with the potential to live in year round because it is all set up, regardless of what your usage is or what you have planned when you were doing the construction of this cottage.
We're going to get into probably one of the touchiest subjects we've ever gotten into. This is an intervention, and it's an intervention aimed at those people that are young and they're in love. And maybe they have their first home and they're looking to sell it now that they've got big equity because of all the COVID buyers. And now they're looking to upsize. Their girlfriend wants to join them. And she's even offered, bless her little heart, to put her name on the deed and put absolutely nothing monetarily into the purchase. Which brings us to an interesting subject called the cohabitation agreement and why many lawyers think this is an excellent idea.
And it works both ways. I noticed you used a female putting her name on, but it could have been, a female, and for just our examples that we're giving here, who perhaps bought her first home, little cottage, a condo, or whatever, and now is in love and in this romance and just wanting to, let's buy, a place together. I have $200,000 or $100,000 worth of equity that I'm going to put down, and I'll put that down, and you can put your name down on the title with me.
And we'll live happily ever after until we're 140 years old. With the use of technology, we'll become a robot married couple.
So this little, and you've called it an intervention, education opportunity is to inform our listeners, Michael, that a cohabitation agreement exists, first of all, so you can very easily research and look it up, because if you've never heard that term before, and you can even speak to a lawyer, it should not take the romance out of the decision and your choice to cohabitate together. It is a smart move. It is something that I would highly recommend, especially due to if you look at the high divorce rates and that, don't assume you're going to be that success story and grow old together.
And the only reason I mentioned a guy is because this is actually a situation we've come across in the last few months where a gentleman was allowing his girlfriend to move in. It's just a good idea. You know what? We were in a meeting one day and we were talking about this to a lawyer, and you know what he said?
What?
He said, this is a good idea.
To do the cohabitation agreement?
Yes.
Yes. So before you become what you consider common law.
And don't mention our podcast. We had nothing to do with this. We don't need any crazy spouses showing up.
It's just smart business. Again, your life should be looked at like it's a little business, and you don't want to be willy-nilly with your business and your bank accounts and your finances. I know my children have all been raised to not share bank accounts. If you are going to do a vacation savings account together, make sure it's equal contribution. There's
No, you open a savings account and just let the spouse contribute to it, but you have your own.
Yeah, of course.
Bad idea?
Yes, it's a very bad idea if you're the party contributing. So
we need to move on.
Smart business. Look at your life like it is a little business, and that a contract is just to protect both of you and save you from perhaps ugly legal fees down the road.
Patty, what's the strangest thing you've ever seen in a house, having been through thousands of houses? What's the strangest things you have seen in a house? Do you want me to give you my little list first?
Yeah,
or
give me
yours?
your list.
Number 1 on the list, a stripper pole. And the gentleman asked me if the stripper pole, and you can answer this because you've got over 16 years of experience, does that stripper pole add or detract from the value of the house, and should he remove it?
My opinion is, I'm assuming he wants to keep his little stripper pole for whatever kind of lifestyle he lives. It would detract, in my opinion, although it's no different than having a pool. You either want a pool or you don't want a pool. I guess you either want a stripper pole or you don't want a stripper pole, but I would be removing the stripper pole.
So what I told him, and I'll just give you a bit of a background here, his garage was turned into essentially a bar. So he had like we were in a restaurant bar, and they had ceramic tile and a dance area and all this sort of stuff. It was very cool. And basically what I told him is, let the buyer make that decision.
Yes, if it wasn't a concern. However, I will say the stripper pools, as much as we've made it sound like a negative, you can do such an amazing workout exercise routine. So not to assume it's something, bad or anyways, it could be suggestive of somebody who's very mindful of their core, because it is apparently, supposedly, I've not used one. Well, I have.
Moving on, the second thing is a dungeon, bunker, a jacuzzi tub in the middle of the hallway upstairs, surrounded with carpet. I was in one house that thought, and we've had this a few times, thought the end of the world was coming. So they had enough groceries or stored goods to last them for months and months. They had a hidden compartment behind the kitchen to hide in. All the walls were cement. The roof was cement. The house was powered by solar with the battery backup. It was like the end of the world fortress. That was a little interesting. And you, Patty?
Well, and just with regards to the poll, it was a family member who was into exercise, which is why I went down that little rabbit hole. So one of the odd things that I've seen, and it is...
Patty, there's nothing wrong with having a stripper pole at home.
Okay, so there's a home on PEI, and whether they still have it, and I don't imagine they've dismantled or have taken this down, but there is a concrete tunnel underground to a bunker, which is a fair size space and room. I don't know why we need that here on the island, but it does exist. And as I was touring this property with a potential buyer client, he did not buy it. I was terrified going through because he was aware of this bunker and I was not.
Other things, real quick?
The other things, moving along, is I've also seen people use in older homes the green indoor-outdoor carpeting in their bathroom.
I've not seen that. You're referring to like a plastic turf.
Yeah, and it goes up the side of the tub. And
I've seen real carpet in bathrooms.
Yes, I've seen real carpets as well. But the green indoor-outdoor, toilets. I have a thing for toilets now because I've seen triangular toilets, square toilets. I've seen toilets shaped like a frog. I've seen some really bizarre toilets in homes as well.
Anything else to add to the list?
No, I don't think so. Not off the top of my mind.
What about the most amazing thing you've ever seen in a house? And I'll let you cover this. We only saw it last week.
Well, it is amazing. I don't know if I'd give it the title the most amazing, but I was extremely impressed. There is a dog owner on PEI who has introduced their buttons. They have a beautiful dog and a larger size dog. And what they had were these little button things around the home. You would assume that there was a child or, they had children, but there wasn't. And it turns out these buttons were how they trained their dog. There was a button if the dog was hungry. There was a button if the dog needed to go outside. There was another, and they're separate. They're not on a panel or anything like that. The buttons are in different locations. And there's a button if the dog just wanted to feel snuggled or if it was feeling sad or lonely. And this dog is about 4 or 5 years old, and this is how it communicates with its owner.
There's 3 buttons.
There were 3.
Snuggle, go out for a pee,
hungry.
Or I'm hungry.
Yes.
And I think it was absolutely amazing that this dog understood what these buttons were for. And I think that's just amazing, and I think all dogs should have these buttons.
Yeah, so we just wanted to share, if you are looking at getting a new pet and wanting to do some training, I never knew this existed. So we just wanted an opportunity, something fun to share.
I promised I would cover this in this episode, and it's not a topic I really want to cover because it's so political. But we're going to cover it, and we're going to tell the truth. And what the question was is an off-island purchaser wants to buy a property in PEI that would be conceivably referred to as a mini farm, that being a property that's over 5 acres. Maybe it's 10 or 15. We're not talking hundreds or thousands of acres here. For argument's sake, it's 8 acres. they were concerned that in order to buy that property, they have to go through Island Regulatory Appeals Commission, which you can research irac.pe.ca, IRAC. And there is a 1% fee for this application. The question is, if for some reason IRAC turns this down, do they get their 1% back? Let's assume this property is $700,000, which wouldn't be inconceivable today. So it's $7,000. Do they get that fee back if it's rejected? No. They may, and I think this is the way it has been worded, may receive 50% back.
If they file and request it. Do not assume, Michael, and it's very important that this is automatically sent back. You have to put in a request to apply to receive up to or a potential of 50%.
So you decide to offer on a property for $700,000. It cost you $7,000. You may get $3,500 back. They reject it. So then you offer another one. So it's another $7,000 or $8,000, depending on the price. So they reject it. So now you're out some more money. That's the one concern. The second concern I have is I go to sell that property down the road and it's sitting on the market for 2 years because there's not a lot of people looking for a mini farm in this particular location. And then I can't find a buyer that can get accepted by IRAC to buy this property. So now I have reduced liquidity, which is probably going to devalue the property, and I'll have to lower the price to sell it to someone that is a resident, potentially. This is the hurdle. What would you suggest to that buyer?
They just need to beware and maybe have the next generation of children or family to be able to possibly gift that property to, because they may be stuck holding on to it. As our island is we're increasing in population, and that sounds great. I know when I moved to PEI, there was, I believe, 130 or 140,000 residents here. I know we're in the upwards of closer to 190,000, and I think the projection that the province has is around 230,000 by year 2035 or something like that. Well, that sounds all great and dandy, but if their projection for these IRAC applicable properties around the island is to have no more than 25 to 30% non-island residents owning them, the probability of the majority of these properties or communities that these properties are situated in, they're going to be hitting those numbers. And if they do, and they're in possession, these properties are owned by non-island residents as their second home, or they just wanted to hold on to this land, you stand the high probability in the future of not being able to sell it.
So what would a professional investor do, whether they're looking at commercial properties like apartments, shopping malls, plazas, whatever the case may be, or residential properties, raw land, or whatever? What would they do? I know what I'd do. I'd be looking at other provinces and states and other locations. I don't want to be regulated by a board that I may or may not know what the rules are tomorrow or what is going to govern how much I can charge rent, because they also control rents and fuel prices, electrical prices, and a bunch of other stuff, milk, commodities. There's a bunch of stuff they can control. And as we know from politics, those rules could change any time. So you have the ability as a purchaser to think of the most important thing when you buy a property next to location, and that is the exit strategy. Anyone can buy a property. Getting out of a property and how liquid that property is and what you return on that property and the regulation during the ownership of that property is another thing to consider. So look at other provinces and states as well.
No, absolutely.
See if they're a little more business friendly.
What I've been advising, because I have many off-island buyers looking at Prince Edward Island, as they want to come, and that's great. I love PEI. I moved here in 2009. I have no intentions on moving off of the island. However, I do advise them to be aware. Please be aware of the future, that this it is not a problem today necessarily, although there are some that are getting rejected because they teeter over the 25 to 30%. If you're not looking to be a resident here of PEI and you just want a land holdings or just a second home, you are at a little bit higher of a risk to be declined. But if you are looking to relocate here, you could get approval, but you need to be mindful. So what I tell my buyer clients is if you can, as much as your dream is to own 100 acres and all that fun stuff and have RV trails and waterfront and walk the beach and you're not going to see anyone for miles, keep it under, if you can, 5 acres. Keep it under 165 feet of water frontage and you'll be okay. And you can enjoy.
For now.
As long as, unless they change the requirement again, which they did. It used to be 5 acres per person whose name's on title and 165 feet per person. And then they changed it a few years back to 5 acres basically per household and 165 feet per household.
Last subject real quick. We've had clients in the past that played the game of being a property manager rather than hiring an actual property manager with the experience and the training to bring tenants in. They thought they would bring it on themselves to bring the tenants in, only to find out that the tenants have absolutely destroyed the property from top to bottom. Kids have ripped the drapes off the walls, jumped around on the stove.
They had more bodies than what they disclosed were going to live in the house.
20 people living in the house rather than just the one person that was in the original application. What did they do when they finally basically forcibly moved these people out of the unit? Is they brought in another tenant and they did the same thing over again. So even though they brought them in on the pretense that the unit was sitting vacant and they wanted to make some money to cover their costs while it was sitting there vacant, the tenants actually caused as much problems as the first tenant. So they ended up losing money. If you're going to bring tenants in, educate yourself or hire a property manager. They're well worth the money. They do charge a percentage typically, but you're going to get that back tenfold because a lot of times they can actually get the rents up as well, as long as IRAC approves it on an annual basis.
Yeah, and be mindful, like this particular situation, Michael, I know you're talking about or speaking on, is it was a friend of a friend. So their friends recommended, these tenants and said they were great and, but I'm not sure if they actually ended up living with these people to know them on a higher level, but it was a middle person recommendation. So they trusted. So the point of me sharing that is it's not just only, these guys know them, so I should be okay. Because that's what happened with tenants number 2. And it did not end any better than their first bad experience. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, PEI's podcast that helps guide and navigate you through the buying and selling in a little bit of Prince Edward Island. We appreciate each and every one of you for downloading and listening to us every week. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We also have the Facebook group, which is an extension of this podcast, where we have each episode a little summary snapshot of what you can expect if you download that episode. Plus, we have Toolbox Tuesdays. We have Thoughtful Thursdays. We're almost caught up with regards to having all the episodes, so there'll be one episode a week released sometime in the next couple months only. And then we have some other fun days that we're going to be replacing them with. What you can expect with Toolbox Tuesday, and I'll just showcase the ones that are going on for the month of February, is all the legal lingo. So things that, again, we do speak a different language, Michael, and I know some clients, they'll just look at me going, I don't know what you're talking about. So the Toolbox Tuesdays that are going on for the month of February are all about the legal lingos to help you understand better what sometimes we're talking about.
Have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Have a great day.